Hey gang, Dr. CJ here to get us started with our first major essay, the HUM art analysis. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the key points of the essay's guidelines, which you can find on Canvas. In fact, it might be helpful to pause me here and go pull it up. Once you've got that, hop back over here and let's dive in. Alright, let's talk bare bones of the essay. This essay is in the humanities academic genre, which means we're looking at individual people, interpretations, analyses, things like that. So you're not looking at big picture stuff, very personal, individual kind of ideas. There's a handy video there for you to check out if you want to get to know a little bit more about the actual academic genre of the humanities, but that's not that big of a deal. For you, all you really need to take away is that in this essay, you're going to write a 5-paragraph essay on an art piece. It's going to be about 500 to 700 words long, so if you're looking at 150 or so words per paragraph, shouldn't be too bad. The purpose of this essay is to help you identify various rhetorical elements. These rhetorical elements are written or visual tools that an author or artist will use to convey an idea, concept, or feeling. And in turn, you will then analyze those elements alongside contextual analysis to support your own claims about a topic. So even though this assignment is specifically about a work of art, the skills you'll hone here are transferable to all modes of written or visual communication. And this is really true because so much of the content that we engage with in our day-to-day lives is visual, right? And so everything from TikToks to Instagram Reels to commercials online to just posters and billboards, they're all visual and they're all trying to send a message. Sometimes the message is just to get you to agree with an idea. Sometimes it's actually trying to sell you on something. And so it's important to understand how creators, authors, and artists will use these different rhetorical elements, these tools, in order to convey their message and to get you, the consumer, the viewer, the audience, to agree with or understand exactly what it is that they want you to. So that's the major idea here. To begin, the first thing you're going to want to do is figure out what it is you want to write about. And that's going to require you to do some hunting on what kind of artwork you might choose to use. So you've got a couple of options here. That first link in your humanities guidelines is going to be to Google Arts and Culture. This is a gigantic database full of different content of famous works of art, everything from Van Gogh to Monet to even something more contemporary like Banksy. So a lot of different options there. So what you're going to do, you want to hunt through that, find an artwork that you would like to use, and that's when you will kind of start to move into the rest of the essay. Word of warning, the only artwork you cannot use is Starry Night, as that's going to be my example for the unit. So no Starry Night, but pretty much everything else is fair game. If Google Arts and Culture is a little too overwhelming, which it kind of is, you can use this little PDF file that I have online. This is going to be a collection of about 60 or so different images, everything from photography to famous works of art to other commercial images. You can use those as well. Just a warning though, those big black bars on the sides of the image are not actually part of the image. They're just there for spacing for some reason. But even if none of those really work for you, you're welcome to choose whichever image you would like. If that's a movie poster, a manga panel, or something else that you're familiar with that you already really like, you're welcome to give me a pitch for it. The only thing is that you're going to have to do a little bit of research on this topic, so you want to try and find something that has some content behind it. So anyway, if you haven't done so already, I would pause me here for a second and go give that Google Arts and Culture a scan, and then come back and we'll carry on. Once you've done that though, then you get to actually start to do the analysis. So here, you're going to learn a little bit about actually diving in. There's a whole extra lecture just about doing the analysis. There's a handy video there in that guidelines that's 5 minutes long, worth checking out just so that you get kind of the bare bones. But what you're going to use are 5 different pieces of visual vocabulary, or these rhetorical elements. You have line, shape, space, color, and medium. Each of those have their own unique qualities, and you're going to choose at least 2 or up to 3 different visual vocabulary elements to help you analyze this image. Once you have that underway, you can start really sinking your teeth into it. And we're going to do more with that as the week goes on and into next week as well. So here, this gives you the idea of what it is you're actually going to be doing. So next up, let's break it down. So let's talk about organization. So this is a standard 5-paragraph essay. You'll have an introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. I've broken down everything here for you again in the guidelines. You will also have an outline assignment that further breaks down each of these sections, but we'll work with that in a couple of weeks. So let's start in the introduction. The introduction is going to include all of the basic information about your artwork: the artist, the title of the artwork, the date, where it's currently located if it's in a museum or something like that, and then finally your thesis statement. We will also spend an entire assignment just on thesis statements, so don't panic. Generally though, your thesis statement is going to be your claim about the artwork or the image and should incorporate those major elements of your analysis. So here's an example from Starry Night. So I say that in Starry Night, Van Gogh uses stark color contrasts and subtle line direction to convey the importance of light in an otherwise dark world. So my claim, or my thesis statement here, has all the major pieces that I need. I have my topic, Starry Night, and my artist, Van Gogh, and I have what he's doing. He's using something. So I have my visual vocabulary elements, color contrast, and line direction. And then I have my claim, what it is that I think the artwork means or what the artist is actually doing. In this example, it's to convey light in an otherwise dark world. And so, again, we're going to spend plenty of time on just thesis statements, but that gives you the idea. You'll also notice that paragraphs 2 and 3 are going to be your major content areas. This is where you're going to do the bulk of your analysis, and these need to correspond with your thesis statement. So these need to have like the same layout. So for example, my thesis statement there has, starting out first is color contrast. So that's going to be in body paragraph 1 or paragraph 2. And then the subtle line direction is going to be the next paragraph. So you'll spend basically an entire paragraph on each of your major pieces of analysis. Paragraph 4 is where we're going to do contextual analysis. Now context, again, is that surrounding information. So this is not where you're going to look at the specific artwork. You're going to look at something surrounding the artwork, be that the artist, the time period, their particular style, some kind of historical background, something like that. Anyway, it's not going to be the image itself, something surrounding it. Again, a couple of weeks later, we're going to spend time just on this assignment. But you're going to do academic research in one of our databases, probably the Gale as I have listed here, and you're going to try and find something, again, about the surrounding aspects of your artwork to help give you a little bit of context. So for example, I may have found a source on post-impressionism, which is the artistic style that Van Gogh uses, and I'll use that to explain how blurred lines are effective or not effective in this particular artwork. So that'll be paragraph 4. Now for some people's assignments, their context is really significant, so that might bump up to paragraph 2, but we'll talk more about that when we get to the outline. Finally, paragraph 5 is your conclusion. You're going to re-emphasize the major points of your analysis and identify what message the artist is sending and how he or she uses those visual vocabulary elements to convey that message. So typically, you're going to restate your thesis statement, you're going to spend a sentence at least on each of your major pieces of analysis, and then you're going to bring it all together. We're going to spend some time on conclusions as well, but that gives you the idea. Okay, now we got through all the good stuff. Let's look at the nitty-gritty. Formatting for this essay, MLA style. Standard use and citation style for humanities, so you should be comfortable with that. But don't worry, we're going to spend time on that specifically. Your essay is going to be double-spaced, works cited page, Times New Roman, 12-point font, all that jazz, 1-inch margins, yada, yada, yada. We'll talk about all the MLA heading and things like that later. On the guidelines page, you've got your rubric, so you can take a look at that. Your minimum word count is 500. Now, I have the maximum listed at 700, but I'm not super picky about maximum. If you break 1,000, though, you've probably done more work than you need to, so hang out in that 500, 700, 800 range. You are required to have at least one academic source. That's going to be from the library, and you're going to have a quote or paraphrase from that as well. We'll talk more about that in a few weeks. And of course, you need to include the image itself as well. So those are the basic essay requirements. And that's it for introducing the essay itself. If you have questions, by all means email me, but take another second peek at that guidelines just to make sure you got all the ideas in place. Now, I do have another lecture on its way, the art analysis lecture. This will give you some examples on how to use those actual pieces of analysis and give you a little bit of space to kind of like play in the sandbox, see how these terms actually get used in analysis. So if you have questions in that way, check out that video. Otherwise, we'll see how you do in the actual essay.